The police sirens echoed across Willow Creek Estates as 37 patrol cars surrounded the HOA clubhouse, their lights painting the manicured lawns in flashing red and blue. Through the community's PA system, a trembling voice confessed, "I've been stealing homeowner funds for 7 years. And using HOA authority to seize private property that was never ours." That voice belonged to HOA President Victoria Pemberton, and in 12 minutes, she'd be in handcuffs. But let me tell you how my simple lakeside camping spot brought down the most corrupt HOA in Texas history. My name is Bryce Calloway, and 6 months ago, I inherited my grandfather's 300-acre ranch that bordered the exclusive Willow Creek Estates. The property had been in our family since 1892, long before some developer decided to build a gated community full of mini mansions and people with more money than sense. What I didn't know was that my inheritance came with a neighbor from Helland. She wore Chanel suits to HOA board meetings. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning in April. I was setting up a small camping area near the lake on my property, just a fire pit, a wooden platform for my tent, and a modest dock for my kayak. The lake itself straddled the property line between my ranch and Willow Creek Estates. But I was careful to build everything at least 50 feet inside my own land. I'd taken a month off from my job as a structural engineer to get the ranch in order and figure out what to do with it. Grandpa had let things go in his final years, and there was plenty of work to be done. The camping spot was my retreat after long days of mending fences and clearing brush. That morning, I was hammering the last planks onto the dock when a golf cart pulled up on the HOA side of the property line. Out stepped a woman who looked like she'd been carved from ice and dressed by a personal shopper. Blonde hair in a perfect bob, pearls that probably cost more than my truck, and an expression that suggested she'd just smelled something deceased. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You there? What do you think you're doing?" I straightened up, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Building a dock? Can I help you?" She clutched a leather folder to her chest like a shield. "I'm Victoria Pemberton, president of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. You're in violation of multiple community standards." I almost laughed. "Ma'am, this is private property." "My property? Not part of your HOA?" Her eyes narrowed. "That structure is visible from our community. It's an eyesore that affects our property values. I demand you remove it immediately." "Again, this is my land. Your HOA rules don't apply here." She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. "We'll see about that. I'm reporting this to code enforcement, and that fire pit is definitely illegal. We have burn bans in this county. Only during drought conditions." I corrected, "Which we don't have right now." I checked. Her face flushed red. "Don't get smart with me, young man. I've been president of this HOA for 11 years. I know how to deal with troublemakers." As she stormed back to her golf cart, I noticed something odd. She'd parked it next to a small shed I hadn't seen before, about 20 feet onto what I was pretty sure was my property. But I'd need to check the survey to be certain. That afternoon, I dug through Grandpa's files and found the property survey from 2010. Sure enough, that shedand, about an acre of what Willow Creek Estates was using as a community garden, was actually on my land. Grandpa must have been too old or too tired to fight them about it, but I wasn't my grandfather. The next morning, I was awakened at 6 a.m. by someone pounding on my door. Through the window, I could see a code enforcement officer and Victoria Pemberton standing on my porch. "Mr. Calloway?" the officer asked when I opened the door. "I'm Doug Morrison from County Code Enforcement. We've received a complaint about unauthorized structures on your property." I noticed Victoria smirking behind him. "Sure. Let me grab the permits." "Permits?" Victoria's voice dripped with false surprise. "For that ramshackle camp setup?" I retrieved the folder I'd prepared the night before. "Permit for the dock. Approved by the County Water Authority. Permit for the fire pit. Approved by the fire marshal. And just for fun, here's the property survey showing that my ramshackle camp is entirely on my own land." Doug examined the papers, nodding. "Everything looks in order. Mr. Calloway." He turned to Victoria. "Ma'am, there's no violation here." Victoria's face went through several shades of red. "This is ridiculous. Check again. There must be something." "Ma'am," Doug said patiently, "the permits are valid. The structures are on his property. There's nothing I can do." As they left, I called out, "Hey Doug, while you're here, want to check if that HOA shed has permits? It looks like it might be on my property." Doug paused. "Is it? According to this survey, yes. About 20 feet over the line." Victoria spun around. That's impossible. We had the property lines verified when we built that garden. When was that? I asked innocently. 2015. Funny. Because I have a survey from 2010 that shows different lines. State Certified Surveyor. 2. Doug Syhed. I'll need to look into this. Victoria. Do you have permits for that shed? Her silence was all the answer we needed. Over the next week, things escalated quickly. Victoria sent me 3 different violation notices for everything from excessive wildlife attracting, I had put up a bird feeder, to visual pollution. My kayak was the wrong color. Apparently. Each notice came with increasingly ridiculous fines, ranging from $500 to $2,000. I responded by hiring a surveyor to do a new property assessment. The results were even better than I'd hoped. Not only was the shed on my property, but so was a decorative gazebo, half of a meditation garden, and this was the kicker part of the HOA's prized lakefront pavilion where they held their summer parties. In total, Willow Creek Estates had been squatting on about 2.5 acres of my land for at least 8 years. I also did some research on Victoria Pemberton. She'd been HOA president for 11 years, winning every election by landslide margins. Strange, considering how many residents I'd seen her berate. She lived in the biggest house in Willow Creek, drove a new Mercedes every year, and somehow afforded all this on her husband's salary as a mid-level bank manager. Something didn't add up. My investigation got more interesting when I met Marcus Thompson, one of the few black families in Willow Creek Estates. I'd seen him walking his dog along the property line and struck up a conversation. "You're the one giving Victoria fits with that camping setup," he said with a grin. "Good for you. That woman's been a nightmare for 11 years. How so?" Marcus glanced around nervously. "Let's just say she has selective enforcement policy. My family gets fined if our grass is a 1/4 inch too tall. Meanwhile, her friends can leave Christmas decorations up until March with no issues. That's discrimination," I said flatly. "Try proving it." "She's smart about documentation. Never puts anything in writing that could get her in trouble." He paused. "Though I've noticed she's been extra aggressive since her husband got passed over for that promotion at the bank. Money troubles. Maybe?" That night, I installed security cameras around my camping area. Good thing, too, because at 3 a.m., I caught footage of someone spray painting "ESOR" across my dock. The person was wearing all black, but they'd made one mistake. They'd arrived in a golf cart with WCEHOA property stenciled on the side. The next morning, I filed a police report for vandalism and trespassing. Detective Sarah Chen, no relation to my grandfather's friend, took my statement and watched the footage with interest. "This isn't the first complaint we've had about that HOA," she said quietly, "but it's the first with solid evidence. Do you mind if we keep an eye on things? Be my guest." Meanwhile, Victoria escalated her harassment. She called a special HOA meeting and passed an emergency resolution, stating that any structures visible from HOA property regardless of where they were built had to comply with HOA architectural standards. She then sent me a bill for $37,000 in retroactive compliance fines. That's when I decided to play hardball. I hired James Martinez, the best property rights attorney in Texas. His first move was to send Willow Creek Estates a formal notice that they were trespassing on my property and had 30 days to remove all structures or face legal action. Victoria's response was to hold a community solidarity barbecue in the contested garden, complete with a banner reading, "Protect our community spaces." She also started a social media campaign painting me as a hostile outsider trying to destroy our peaceful neighborhood. What she didn't know was that I'd made friends with more of her neighbors. Turns out, Marcus wasn't the only one with stories about selective enforcement. The Nguyen's had been fined for displaying a Vietnamese flag on their own designated flag holidays. Sarah Walsh, a single mom, had been threatened with liens for being 1 day late on HOA dues while board members routinely paid months late with no penalties. The stories painted a picture of an HOA run like a criminal enterprise, with Victoria as the godfather. I started recording everything, every interaction, every threat, every fine. I also did something else. I exercised my property rights. Since the HOA had been trespassing on my land, I installed a gate blocking their access to their garden and shed. Perfectly legal. According to James, Victoria's response came at 2 a.m. the next morning. Air horns, dozens of them blasting from the HOA side of the property line. The message was clear. If she couldn't force me to comply, she'd make my life hell until I gave in. I called the police. But the horns stopped just before they arrived. Noise ordinance only applies to sustained disturbances. The officer explained apologetically. 30 seconds of noise doesn't qualify. This went on for 3 nights. Air horns, floodlights, even a drone buzzing my bedroom window. Each harassment lasted just short of the legal threshold. Victoria had done her homework. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd gotten cocky. On the 4th night, I was ready. I'd installed professional-grade recording equipment around my property, the kind that could pick up conversations from 100 feet away. I also had something else, friend from my army days, who specialized in electronic surveillance countermeasures. Someone's been sloppy, Jake told me, holding up a small device. This was attached to your dock. It's a listening device. But here's the interesting part, it's HOA property. See the inventory sticker? We found 6 more devices, all marked as HOA property. That's when things got really interesting. I brought the devices to Detective Chen along with a new complaint: illegal surveillance. This was a felony, not some minor property dispute. We'll need more evidence, she said, but this is good. Keep documenting everything. That night, instead of harassment, I got a visitor. Victoria's husband, Robert. Looking haggard and worried. We need to talk, he said. Please. I know Victoria's been difficult, but this has gone too far. I let him in, making sure my phone was recording. She's lost it, Robert said, collapsing into a chair. The HOA money she's been skimming for years, using it for our lifestyle. I just found out last week. The special assessments, the fine shaft of it goes into her personal account. Why are you telling me this? Because she's planning something worse. She's got the board to approve annexing your property into the HOA jurisdiction. It's completely illegal. But she's got a judge in her pocket who'll sign off on it. You'll wake up tomorrow under HOA rules. And she'll fine you out of existence. I stared at him. That's not how property law works. Victoria doesn't care about law. She cares about winning. He pulled out a flash drive. This has 7 years of HOA financial records. The real ones. Not the cooked books, she shows the members. I'm giving it to you because when this explodes, and it will, I want to be on the right side. After Robert left, I called James, who conference called in a forensic accountant. We spent all night going through the records. What we found was staggering. Victoria had embezzled over $1.2 million. Fake vendor payments, inflated maintenance costs, and thousands in emergency assessments that went straight to her accounts. She'd been living entirely off stolen HOA funds while her husband thought his salary was supporting them. But the financial crimes were just the tip of the iceberg. The records also showed systematic discrimination in fine distribution. Minority families paid 70% more in fines than white families. Single women were cited 3 times more often than married couples. There was even a secret rating system. Residents were marked as compliant, problematic, or target for removal. I was listed as target for removal, extreme measures authorized. James whistled low. This isn't just embezzlement. This is racketeering. RICO territory. She's running the HOA like organized crime. What do? We call the FBI. But before we could make that call, my phone rang. It was Jake, my surveillance friend. Bryce, get out of your house. Now. I just intercepted a call. Victoria's got a crew coming to plant drugs in your truck. She's planning to call in an anonymous tip to get you arrested. I grabbed the flash drive and the evidence boxes and drove straight to the police station. Detective Chen met me in the parking lot. We've been monitoring the situation, she said. Stay here. We're moving in now. What happened next was like something out of a movie. Turns out, the FBI had been investigating Willow Creek Estates for 2 years based on fair housing complaints. My evidence was the final piece they needed. As I waited at the station, Jake texted me updates. The crew Victoria had hired were actually undercover federal agents. They'd been stringing her along for weeks, recording every conspiracy she hatched. At 6 a.m., just as the sun was rising over Willow Creek Estates, Operation Homeowner Freedom kicked into high gear. 43 law enforcement vehicles rolled through the gates. FBI, state police, county sheriffs, even postal inspectors, mail fraud charges, but the most beautiful part was what happened at the clubhouse. You see, I'd given Jake one last recording device to plant in the HOA's own PA system, so when Victoria was arrested in the middle of an emergency board meeting, she'd called to approve my annexation. Her confession was broadcast to the entire community. I don't care what evidence they have. Her voice boomed across Willow Creek. "I've owned this place for 11 years. These sheep will believe whatever I tell them, and that Calloway bastard? I'll bury him in legal fees even if I have to steal every penny from the reserves." Then came the sound of splintering wood as federal agents breached the boardroom door. "FBI, Victoria Pemberton. You're under arrest for embezzlement, racketeering, conspiracy to commit false imprisonment, violation of the Fair Housing Act." The list went on for 2 minutes. 2 entire minutes of charges broadcast to every home in Willow Creek Estates, as the sirens wailed and the community watched their HOA president hauled away in handcuffs. One final sound echoed through the PA system, the click of handcuffs and Victoria's shriek, "You can't do this. I am the HOA. These idiots are nothing without me, Robert. You spineless worm. You're the one who signed the checks. Tell them." But Robert was already in custody, turning state's evidence in exchange for immunity. And me? I was still at the police station, watching it all unfold on Detective Chen's computer, the flash drive of evidence secure in an FBI evidence bag. But the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because as the dust settled and the residents of Willow Creek realized the scope of Victoria's crimes, something else emerged from the records. The original HOA charter had never been properly filed. Every rule, every fine, every lien for the past 11 years was potentially invalid. And that shed on my property? It wasn't just storage. Victoria had been using it to hide cash, gold, and documents related to her bigger scheme that involved 4 other HOAs across Texas. As I drove back to my ranch, past the fleet of law enforcement vehicles and the gaggle of news vans already gathering, my phone buzzed with a text from James. "Congratulations. You just took down the biggest HOA corruption ring in state history. The Attorney General wants to meet you tomorrow." I pulled up to my grandfather's house and looked out at my simple camping spot by the lake. The dock still had eyesore spray painted across it, but now it looked like a badge of honor. The war with Victoria Pemberton was over, but the battle to reform Willow Creek Estates and expose the network of corrupt HOAs she'd been part of was just beginning. As I stepped out of my truck, I noticed residents starting to gather at the property line, not to harass me this time, but to shake my hand. Marcus Thompson was first in line. "You did it?" he said, tears in his eyes. "You actually did it? 11 years of hell, and you ended it in 6 weeks." But even as I accepted their thanks, I couldn't shake the feeling that this victory had come too easy. Victoria Pemberton had run this place like a dictator for over a decade. She had to have contingency plans, allies, hidden resources. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Calloway?" The voice was female, professional, cold. "This is Amanda Sterling from Sterling, Klein and Associates. I represent certain interests that were partnered with Miss Pemberton. We need to discuss your future in this community." "Is that a threat?" "It's an opportunity. Meet me at the Willow Creek Clubhouse in 1 hour. Come alone. And Mr. Calloway, bring that flash drive. The real one. We know the FBI only has copies." The line went dead. I looked at the celebrating residents, then at my camping spot, then at the clubhouse in the distance where police tape now fluttered in the morning breeze. Victoria was in custody, but apparently, she was just middle management. The real power behind the HOA corruption was still out there, and they wanted to talk. As I headed inside to prepare for this meeting, one thought echoed in my mind. What had Grandpa really known about all this, and why had he never fought back? In his files, buried under decades of tax returns, I'd found one more document. A letter, dated just a month before his death. "Bryce, if you're reading this, then they've finally made their move. The land is more valuable than you know. Don't let them take it. Trust no one from Willow Creek, and whatever you do, don't." The letter ended there. Unfinished. I had 1 hour to decide. Meet with these interests, and find out how deep this conspiracy went. Or play it safe and let the FBI handle everything. But as I looked at the sunrise reflecting off the lake I knew I couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when I was so close to the truth. The police sirens had faded, but I could still hear them in the distance. Heading to other HOAs. Other arrests. I arrived at the Willow Creek Clubhouse with 15 minutes to spare. But I wasn't alone. Detective Chen and 2 FBI agents were parked a block away, listening through the wire taped to my chest. The flash drive Amanda Sterling wanted? It was in my pocket. But it was a decoy. The real one was in an FBI evidence locker. Its contents already copied and catalogued. The clubhouse looked different in the morning light. Wrapped in yellow police tape like a crime scene Christmas present. I ducked under the tape and pushed through the doors into the main meeting room where just hours ago, Victoria Pemberton had been arrested mid-rant. Amanda Sterling was already there. And she wasn't what I expected. Mid-30s. Wearing jeans and a Texas Rangers t-shirt instead of a power suit. She was eating takeout Chinese food at the board table. Looking more like a tech startup CEO than a corporate lawyer. Kung Pao chicken, she offered, holding up a container. I always get hungry during hostile takeovers. I'll pass. You said you represent certain interests? She laughed. God. I hate lawyer speak. Let me be straight with you. Bryce. I'm not actually a lawyer. I'm a fixer. When HOAs go sideways, the management companies call me to clean up the mess. And Victoria's mess is bigger than you know? She pulled out a tablet and showed me a map of Texas with dozens of red dots. 43 HOAs across the state, all running the same scam Victoria pioneered here. Embezzlement. Discrimination. Illegal surveillance. We're talking about 70 million in stolen funds. I kept my expression neutral. Why tell me this? Because you're sitting on a gold mine and don't even know it. She swiped to aerial photos of my property. Your grandfather's ranch isn't just land. There's a natural gas deposit under that lake worth approximately $200 million. Victoria knew, that's why she was so desperate to annex your property. My wire would be picking all this up. Good. How did she know? Her cousin works for the Geological Survey Office. He's been feeding her information for years about valuable properties adjacent to HOAs. She'd harass the owners, force them out through legal costs or bogus liens. Then have the HOA buy the land at foreclosure prices. But I inherited the ranch. She couldn't force a sale. Amanda's smile was sharp. No. But she could make your life hell until you sold voluntarily. Or she could have you arrested on false charges. Seize the property through civil asset forfeiture. She had 3 judges in her pocket. Had? 2 are already in custody. The 3rd fled to Costa Rica this morning. She closed the tablet. Here's my offer. Sell the mineral rights to my clients. 20 million cash. You keep the surface land and your little camping spot. We'll handle the gas extraction from the HOA side of the lake. Everyone wins. Except the residents who've been robbed blind. They'll get restitution from the FBI seizures. This is about the future. Not the past. I pretended to consider it. And if I refuse? Then you'll spend the next 10 years in court fighting off challenges to your property title. My clients have very deep pockets and very little patience. She leaned forward. Plus, there are things about your grandfather you don't know. Things that could complicate your inheritance. What things? She pulled out a folder. In 1993, your grandfather signed a mineral lease with Texaco. 99 years. Full extraction rights. He took a $50,000 payment and never told anyone. That lease is still valid. My blood ran cold. If this was true? That's impossible. I've been through all his papers. Not all of them. She produced a document that looked authentically aged. This was filed in Brazos County. Not here. Easy to miss if you don't know where to look. I studied the document. It looked real. But something felt off. The signature was close to Grandpa's end. But not quite right. The notary seal was smudged. This was a forgery. But a good one. I need time to verify this. I said, you have 24 hours? Then my clients exercise their rights under this lease. And you get nothing. She stood up. Leaving the folder. Think about it. Bryce. $20 million. Or 20 years of legal battles you can't win. As she walked out, I spoke to my wire. Did you get all that? Detective Chen's voice crackled through my earpiece. Every word. We're tracking her now. That lease document? Fake. But convincing. Someone put serious money into this. Get out of there. We need to regroup. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something. A hidden camera in the corner. Its red light blinking. This meeting had been recorded by someone else. But who? Back at the police station, the FBI task force was in full swing. Special Agent Rivera led the briefing. Amanda Sterling is an alias. Real name, Michelle Vance. Former oil company executive, who went rogue 5 years ago. She specializes in fraudulent mineral rights acquisition. We've been tracking her across 3 states. So there's no natural gas? I asked. Oh. There's gas all right. Worth maybe 300 million. Not 200. Your grandfather knew and specifically didn't sell because he wanted to preserve the land. We found his real geological surveys in Victoria's shed. She'd been planning this for years. Detective Chen added. We also decoded more of the HOA records. Victoria wasn't working alone. She had a partner on the inside. Someone who helped her identify targets and forge documents. Who? We're still working on that, but whoever it is, they're still out there. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Don't answer that. Agent Rivera said, but I recognized the area code. It was from Grandpa's hometown 3 hours north. Against Rivera's protests. I answered. Bryce Calloway? The voice was elderly. Female. Worried. My name is Dorothy Cheney, was your grandfather's friend. I've been trying to reach you for months. There's something you need to know about William's death. My grandfather had died of a heart attack. At least, that's what the death certificate said. What about it? He was murdered. Young man. And I can prove it. But not over the phone. Can you come to Millerville? Alone? I know that sounds suspicious given everything happening. But there are things about your grandfather's past that only I know, things that explain why they killed him. I looked at the FBI agents. Rivera was shaking his head. But Chen nodded slightly. I'll be there in 4 hours. I said, bless you. And Bryce? Trust no one from Willow Creek. Not even the ones who seem to be helping you. The line went dead. Rivera exploded. Absolutely not. This is clearly a trap. But Chen was thoughtful. Actually, I know Dorothy Chen by reputation. She was a civil rights lawyer in the 60s. If she says she has information, then we go in force. Rivera said. She said alone. And Amanda Sterling said to bring the flash drive. Criminals Lee. Calloway. But something in Dorothy's voice had sounded genuine. Desperate. Even. And the mention of Grandpa being murdered. I'm going. I decided. But on my terms? 3 hours later. I pulled into Millerville. A town that time forgot. Main Street was 3 blocks of boarded-up shops and fading American dream. Dorothy Chen lived in a Victorian house that had seen better decades. Paint peeling but bones still strong. She answered the door, herself 80-something. Sharp-eyed. Wearing a faded Berkeley Law sweatshirt. You look just like William, she said. Come in. We don't have much time. Her living room was a museum of legal battles, framed newspaper clippings about civil rights cases. Photos with Rosa Parks and Thurgood Marshall. But she led me past all that to a study lined with files. Your grandfather and I worked together in the 70s, she began, pulling out a thick folder. Not many people know he was a civil rights investigator before he got into ranching. We exposed discriminatory lending practices. Illegal property seizures. The works. I never knew that. He didn't talk about it after Maria died. My grandmother. But he never stopped fighting. Just changed tactics. That ranch? He bought it specifically to block certain developments. That lake? It sits on the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. If the wrong people control it, they could poison half the water supply in central Texas. What? She showed me geological maps. Water table data. Environmental impact studies. The natural gas extraction isn't the real play. It's the injection wells. They want to pump industrial waste into the ground. Call it enhanced recovery. Your grandfather spent 20 years gathering evidence about their plans. Who's they? Started as a group of oil executives in the 80s. Now it's their kids. All grown up and running HOAs as front organizations. Victoria Pemberton? She's 3rd generation. Her grandfather tried to buy William's land in 1987. The scope of this was staggering. You said he was murdered? Dorothy's face hardened. 3 weeks before he died. William called me. Said he'd found the smoking gun documents proving the whole conspiracy. He was going to the FBI. But he wanted backup copies with me. He never made it. Heart attack? Induced. His coffee was laced with a drug that triggers cardiac arrest in people with his condition. Undetectable unless you're specifically looking for it. She handed me a toxicology report. I had a friend run tests on tissue samples. This is proof. Why didn't you go to the police? With what? A theory about a drug that officially doesn't exist. Involving people who own half the judges in Texas? She shook her head. I needed someone they'd listen to. Someone with standing. His heir. Where are these documents he mentioned? That's the problem. He hid them. Somewhere on the ranch. He said. Told me you'd know where to look when the time came. I thought about Grandpa's unfinished letter. Trust no one from Willow Creek. There's more. Dorothy said. The person who gave him the documents. In his inside source? They're still in Willow Creek? Still pretending to help while feeding information to the conspiracy. Who? He never said. Too dangerous. But he did say one thing. The shepherd leads the sheep to slaughter. Shepherd. Pastor? No? Too obvious. Unless. My phone rang. Detective Chen. Bryce? Where are you? Amanda Sterling just turned up dead. Apparent suicide. But we're not buying it. And there's been a development. Someone just filed an emergency injunction to seize your property. The plaintiff is listed as the Willow Creek Community Trust. But we can't find who's behind it. I know who it is, I said. The pieces finally clicking. The shepherd. It's. The window exploded in a shower of glass. Dorothy shoved me down as another shot splintered the desk where I'd been standing. Back door, she hissed. Surprisingly agile for her age. We ran through her kitchen, as more shots destroyed the china cabinet. Outside, I saw the Shootera Professional. Tactical gear. Assault rifle. This wasn't some HOA dispute anymore. Dorothy's ancient Buick was in the garage. I shoved her into the passenger seat and gunned it in reverse. Smashing through the garage door as bullets starred the windshield. William kept a safe house. Dorothy gasped, clutching her arm. Blood seeped between her fingers. 47 Elm Street. He said if anything happened. I drove like a man possessed. Taking random turns. Doubling back. The shooter had vanished. But I knew they'd have backup coming. The safe house was a nondescript ranch home in a working-class neighborhood. Dorothy had the key. Inside, it was like stepping back in time. 70s furniture. Wood paneling. And a wall of filing cabinets. William updated this every year. Dorothy said as I bandaged her arm. Everything he couldn't keep at the ranch. I started pulling files. Financial records. Property deeds. Geological surveys. And then pay dirt. A folder labeled WCS Shepherd. Inside were photos. Financial transactions. Recorded conversations. The shepherd wasn't who I'd thought. It wasn't Detective Chen, or Agent Rivera, or even someone from the HOA board. It was Marcus Thompson, the friendly neighbor who'd commiserated about Victoria's discrimination, the one who'd pointed me toward her financial troubles. He'd been playing both sides for 15 years. Identifying residents who might cause trouble, feeding information to Victoria while pretending to be a victim himself. But the real shock was the last document, a contract between Marcus and something called the Brazos Syndicate, dated a month before Grandpa's death. Marcus had been paid $200,000 to facilitate property acquisition at my ranch. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Safe house compromised. They're coming. M. Marcus. He was warning me? Or leading them to me? Dorothy saw my confusion. William always said the shepherd might repent at the end. Maybe. The front door exploded off its hinges. 3 men in tactical gear rushed in. I shoved Dorothy behind the couch and grabbed the nearest weapon. Grandpa's old hunting rifle mounted on the wall. Still loaded. The firefight was brief but intense. Grandpa had modified the house steel plates in the walls. Reinforced furniture. He'd been preparing for this day. When the smoke cleared, 2 attackers were down. The third had fled. Sirens were already approaching. Go. Dorothy urged. Take the files. Find William's proof. I'll handle the police. You're injured. I've been handling cops since before you were born. Go, the ranch. I grabbed the crucial files and slipped out the back. The ranch was 90 minutes away. 90 minutes to figure out where Grandpa had hidden documents that people were willing to kill for. As I drove, I thought about his letter. Don't let them take it. Trust no one from Willow Creek. And whatever you do, don't. Don't what? What had he been trying to warn me about? Then it hit me. The camping spot. He'd always talked about taking me camping by the lake when I was old enough, but he died when I was overseas. And we never got the chance. I pulled into the ranch as the sun was setting. My camping spot, the dock. The fire pit was exactly where he'd always said we'd camp. He'd been telling me where to look all along. I grabbed a shovel and started digging near the fire pit. 3 feet down. I hit metal. A military surplus ammo can. Waterproof and locked. The combination was my grandmother's birthday. Inside, USB drives. Documents. Photos. And a letter addressed to me. Bryce? If you're reading this. Then they finally got me. The Brazos Syndicate has been poisoning Texas for 40 years. Using HOAs as fronts to seize land for illegal waste disposal. I have pro-financial records. EPA violations. Bribes to state officials. It goes all the way to Washington. The shepherd is Marcus Thompson. But he's trying to get out. His daughter has leukemia from the groundwater contamination. He came to me. Wanted to make a deal. I was going to the FBI. But I guess I waited too long. Don't let them win, son. And remember, the best revenge is justice served cold, with proper documentation. I smiled despite everything, even facing death. Grandpa was cracking jokes about paperwork. The USB drives contained everything: 40 years of evidence, fake HOAs, poisoned aquifers, bribed officials, murdered witnesses. Victoria had been middle management. The real powers were oil executives, state senators, even a federal judge. My phone rang. Marcus Thompson. Don't hang up, he said quickly. I know you know. I'm sorry about William. I tried to warn him, but it was too late. You killed him. No, I gave him information. They killed him because of it. Just like they killed Amanda Sterling today when she tried to double-cross them. His voice broke. My daughter's dying. Bryce, the water they poisoned got to her. I'll testify. I'll give you everything. Just promise me they'll pay. Where are you? Willow Creek Clubhouse. They called an emergency meeting. New HOA president's being selected. Someone worse than Victoria. They're going to vote to seize your land tonight using forged documents. Who's the new president? Robert Pemberton, Victoria's husband. He was never the patsy he pretended to be. He's syndicate royalty. His immunity deal was just to get the FBI to stop looking at him. Everything clicked. Robert's convenient confession, his perfect timing, his knowledge of where Victoria kept records. He'd thrown his wife under the bus to save the larger operation. How many syndicate members are there? At the meeting? 15. But Bryce. They have armed security now. After today's failures, they're not taking chances. I thought fast. Marcus, can you get to the PA system? Maybe? Why? Because we're going to give them a meeting they'll never forget. 40 minutes later, I parked outside Willow Creek Estates. The gate guard was gone, probably inside providing security for the meeting. I could see cars packed around the clubhouse, including several black SUVs that screamed private military. Detective Chen's voice crackled through my phone. Bryce, we're 20 minutes out with full SWAT backup. Do not engage. But 20 minutes might be too late. They could destroy evidence, flee, or worse, formally vote to seize my land using their corrupt judges. I made my way to the maintenance shed, where the HOA stored their equipment, including their PA system controls. Marcus had left it unlocked. Inside the clubhouse, I could hear Robert Pemberton speaking. With Victoria's unfortunate breakdown, we need stable leadership. I propose we expedite the vote on the Callaway property seizure. Time for some Texas justice. I plugged Grandpa's USB drive into the PA system's computer. He'd been thorough audio recordings of syndicate meetings going back decades. I queued up the best ones and hit play. Suddenly, through every speaker in Willow Creek Estates, voices echoed. The Callaway elimination is approved. Make it look natural. 40 million in toxic waste, pumped straight into the aquifer. The HOA structure is perfect. These idiots pay us to steal from them. And then, the killing blow. Robert Pemberton's voice from 5 years ago. Victoria's getting too greedy. When the time comes, we'll throw her to the FBI, and I'll take over. My father always said, never let a useful fool know they're either. Inside the clubhouse, pandemonium erupted. I heard shouting, furniture crashing, Robert screaming to find the source. But I wasn't done. I had video files too, displayed on every smart television in the building through the integrated system. Financial records, toxic waste manifests, murder planning sessions. And then Marcus came through. His voice, live over the PA. My name is Marcus Thompson. For 15 years, I've been an informant for the Brazos Syndicate. I watched them poison our water, steal our money, and murder anyone who opposed them, including William Callaway. I have documents, recordings, everything, and I'm done being silent. Security was scrambling, but they had a problem: evacuate the panicking HOA members or hunt for Marcus. In the chaos, they chose wrong. FBI vehicles screamed through the gates just as the syndicate's security tried to establish a perimeter. In minutes, the peaceful suburban clubhouse became a war zone of federal agents, private security, and fleeing conspirators. I watched from the maintenance shed as Robert Pemberton was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming about his connections, his lawyers, his rights. Behind him came the other soil executives, corrupt judges, state officials who'd sold out their constituents for syndicate money. Detective Chen found me an hour later, still in the shed, watching the arrests on the security monitors. That was incredibly stupid, she said. Also incredibly effective. The syndicate's lawyers are already trying to claim the evidence is inadmissible. Good thing Marcus has originals of everything. I said. And Dorothy Chen has Grandpa's backups. And I uploaded everything to WikiLeaks 20 minutes ago. So, she stared at me. You what? Grandpa always said the best disinfectant is sunlight. The whole world's going to know what they did to Texas. She shook her head but smiled. Your grandfather would be proud? And probably horrified at your methods. He was a by-the-book man. I agreed, but he also knew sometimes the book isn't enough. Marcus emerged from the clubhouse in handcuffs but walking tall. He'd confessed to everything. But with his cooperation, he'd avoid prison. More importantly, his testimony would put the syndicate leaders away for life. As the sun rose over Willow Creek Estates, the scope of victory became clear. 43 HOAs across Texas were under federal oversight. Hundreds of millions in stolen funds would be returned to residents. The illegal toxic waste sites would be cleaned up. And my ranch? Safe. The forged mineral lease was void. The HOA's attempted seizure was illegal. The land would remain protected. Just as Grandpa wanted. A week later, I stood at my camping spot, finally able to enjoy the peace. The dock had been repainted. The eyesore message covered with a mural painted by grateful Willow Creek kids. The fire pit crackled with legal, permitted flames. Marcus's daughter Keisha sat in a camping chair, sketching the sunset. Her leukemia was in remission thanks to proper treatment funded by seized syndicate assets. Marcus himself was in witness protection, but he'd asked me to look after her while he testified. Mr. Calloway? She asked. Do you think my dad's a hero or a villain? I thought about it. I think he's a man who made terrible choices, then made one good one. That doesn't erase the bad. But it matters. Like your grandfather? Mom says he did some questionable things fighting for civil rights. Maybe. But he always said the measure of a person isn't their worst moment or their best. It's what they do with the time in between. Detective Chenao Sheriff Chen, after a special election, stopped by with barbecue from the grateful residents. The new HOA board, elected from longtime residents who'd suffered under Victoria's regime, had voted to dissolve most of the restrictive covenants. Willow Creek Estates was becoming just Willow Creek, a neighborhood instead of a financial scheme. Any regrets? Chen asked, watching the sun set over the lake. Just one. I admitted. I wish Grandpa could see this. His land safe. The water protected. The bad guys in prison. Who says he can't? She pointed to the fireflies beginning to dance over the water. My grandmother always said the ancestors watch through firefly eyes. Sounds like something Grandpa would have liked. As darkness fell, I thought about the journey from that first confrontation with Victoria to this moment of peace. The HOA president who'd called the cops on my simple camping spot was now in federal prison, facing 400 years. Her husband's crime family was dismantled. The toxic waste sites were being cleaned. And me? I had my grandfather's ranch, my lakeside camping spot, and the knowledge that sometimes, one person standing up to corruption can bring down an empire. The wire I'd worn to meet Amanda Sterling was now in an FBI evidence locker. The flash drives were backing up convictions across the state. The forged documents meant to steal my land had become exhibits in the largest HOA fraud case in American history. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, there was just the fire, the stars, and the peace Grandpa had fought to protect. Dorothy Chen had been right about one thing the ancestors do watch. And somewhere, I knew William Calloway was smiling, proud that his grandson had finished what he started. The shepherd had led the sheep to slaughter. All right. Just not the sheep they'd expected. 6 months later, I stood in an Austin courthouse watching the final dominoes fall. Senator Bradley Hutchinson, the syndicate's highest-placed puppet, was sentenced to 35 years for racketeering, environmental crimes, and conspiracy to commit murder. He'd overseen the toxic waste operations for 2 decades, protecting them through legislation that gutted environmental protections. Mr. Calloway. A reporter shoved a microphone in my face as I left the courthouse. How does it feel to have exposed the largest criminal conspiracy in Texas history? Ask the families who lost loved ones to contaminated water. I said, ask the homeowners who got their life savings back. This was never about me. But privately, I felt the satisfaction. Grandpa's murder had been avenged through proper legal channels, exactly as he would have wanted. Back at the ranch, changes were everywhere. The illegal HOA structures had been removed from my property, but I'd kept the garden and turned it into a memorial for victims of the syndicate's crimes. 47 names were engraved on a stone marker by the lake. The camping spot had evolved too. What started as a simple dock and fire pit was now a community gathering place. Every weekend, former Willow Creek residents came to fish, kayak, or just sit by the fire and heal from years of HOA trauma. Marcus Thompson's testimony had been the linchpin. From witness protection, he'd provided details on 320 separate crimes. His daughter Kaisha visited monthly, bringing art supplies to paint the wildflowers that now grew where toxic waste once leaked. Found something interesting, Sheriff Chen said one afternoon. Joining me on the dock, she handed me a folder. Dorothy Chen's been digging through more of your grandfather's papers. Inside was a photograph from 1972. Young William Calloway standing with Martin Luther King Jr. and a group of civil rights lawyers. Circled in red was a young Dorothy Chen. They fought the good fight long before HOAs existed. Chen continued. Predatory lending, racial covenants, environmental racism. Different names, same evil, and the same solution, I said. Regular people standing up and saying no more. The lake sparkled in the afternoon sun. Clean now after extensive remediation. Fish had returned. Birds nested in the trees. The ecosystem Grandpa died protecting was thriving. My phone rang, a Hollywood producer wanting to buy the movie rights. I declined. As I had all the others. This story wasn't entertainment. It was a warning and a promise. That corruption might run deep. But justice runs deeper. As Sheriff Chen drove away, I noticed fresh flowers on Grandpa's memorial bench. The card read, "Thank you for raising a warrior. The families of Willow Creek." I sat on that bench, looking out over the land 3 generations of Callaways had protected, and made a silent promise. The syndicate was finished. But others would rise. Other HOAs would overreach. Other corporations would poison the earth for profit. And when they did, we'd be ready. Because if Victoria Pemberton's takedown taught anything, it's this. Sometimes the best response to a bully with a rulebook is a grandson with his grandfather's courage and 40 years of evidence. The fireflies began their evening dance as I headed inside. Tomorrow, I'd start building that workshop with all proper permits. Of course, some battles you win with sledgehammers. Others, you win with paperwork. Grandpa had taught me both. I'm HOA president, knock it off now.